Picture a storm-swept night in a medieval city, rain hammering cobblestones. A cloaked figure slipping through shadows with a blade hidden under tattered rags. Heart pounding as guards patrol just steps away. This is no Hollywood hero, no master of stealth trained in secret lairs, but a desperate soul, driven by hunger and haunted by betrayal, navigating a world where one wrong move means a noose or worse. Welcome to History Orbit, where we spiral through the untold stories of the past, unearthing the raw, gritty truths that shaped empires and broke lives. Tonight we embark on a 2-hour journey through 3 gripping tales. The cursed life of a shadow blade in the grim kingdom of Verland, the ruthless ambition of Queen Aeloria, forging a dynasty in Thrime, and the enigmatic palace of Knovara, a labyrinth of secrets lost to time. If you're ready to orbit history's darkest corners, hit that subscribe button and join our crew of explorers. We dive deep every week and your comments fuel the journey, so tell us where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's plunge into the first tale, the Shadowblade's Curse, where survival is a gamble and trust is a luxury no one can afford. In the rain-soaked alleys of Verland, a fictional kingdom nestled in the rugged heart of medieval Europe around the 13th century, a man named Torin crouches behind a barrel, his breath shallow, his fingers gripping a rusty dagger that smells faintly of blood and regret. Torin isn't a legend, not a knight or a noble, but a former soldier, scarred from battles he barely survived, now reduced to a shadow blade. The name whispered for those who kill for coin in Verland's brutal underworld. Hollywood paints assassins as sleek, hooded masters of death, scaling castle walls with gadgets and charm, but the truth is far uglier. Being a shadow blade sucked, not because it was glamorous and failed to deliver, but because it was a desperate, filthy, soul-crushing last resort for those society had chewed up and spat out. Torin wasn't born to this life. No one was. He was once a farmer's son, then a conscript in Verland's endless border wars, until a lost battle and a looted village left him with nothing but a limp and a knack for staying unseen. In Verland, a kingdom of iron-fisted barons and paranoid dukes where power shifted with the swing of a sword, shadow blades weren't trained in mountaintop temples or secret guilds. They were peasants, deserters, or thieves who'd learned to aim a knife and not flinch. If you had a goat or a scrap of land, you were above this life, maybe even hiring men like Torin to settle scores. But if you were Torin with no family, no future, and no hope of a warm bed, a whispered offer of silver in a smoky tavern was all it took to pull you into the dark. The job was simple in theory: a name, a place, a pouch of coins, half now, half later, if you were lucky. But the targets weren't simple, no quiet farmers or drunken brawlers. They were men like Duke Baldric, a corrupt noble hoarding grain while villages starved, guarded by a dozen armed men, a moat, and a castle with walls thick enough to laugh at battering rams. Taking him out meant weeks of planning, watching patrol patterns, memorizing creaky doors, and bribing a stable boy who might sell you out for a loaf of bread. The pay was tempting, a small fortune for a man like Torin, enough to buy a horse, maybe a new life in a distant town. But the risks were horrifying. One misstep and you'd be dangling from a gallows, your name cursed as a traitor. There were no perks, no pension, no glory, just the constant gnaw of fear and the knowledge that even if you succeeded, you'd never sleep soundly again. Torin's first job wasn't a choice, it was survival. He'd escaped to debtor's prison, his body bruised from beatings, his name erased from any ledger that mattered. A greasy merchant in a tavern corner slid a coin purse across the table and muttered Duke Baldric's name. Torin didn't ask why. He couldn't afford to. The merchant's eyes were cold, promising payment but no loyalty. That's the first lesson of a shadow blade. Trust no one, not the client, not the tavern wench, not even the blade in your hand, which might snap at the worst moment. Torin learned fast, not from mentors or manuals, but from not dying. There were no candlelit dojos, number-wise masters spouting philosophy. If you were lucky, maybe a thief taught you how to walk silently on cobblestones, or a mercenary showed you how to grip a knife without slicing your own fingers. Most times, you learned by trial and error, heavy on the error. Poison? That was a gamble, not a science. Mix some nightshade with wine, and maybe the Duke drops dead, or maybe he just gets dizzy and doubles his guard. Worse, you might sip the wrong cup, and there was no healer to call, just a ditch to crawl into while your stomach churned. Weapons were whatever you could steal. A dagger lifted from a sleeping guard, a rope for strangling or climbing, maybe a bent nail if things got desperate. Tauren carried his tools in a hollowed-out loaf of bread, not because it was clever, but because it was all he had. Success didn't come from skill. It came from surviving long enough to learn from your mistakes. And every job left scars, some on the body, most on the soul. The life of a shadow blade was a cycle of dread. You took the job because you had nothing left to lose. But every step toward the target felt like a step toward your own grave. Tauren's first attempt on Duke Baldric was a disaster. He'd bribed a kitchen boy to slip poison into the Duke's stew, but the boy got nervous, spilled half the vial, and the Duke only got a stomachache. Now the castle was on high alert, guards doubled, and Tauren was hiding in a haystack, fleas biting his skin, heart racing as dogs barked in the distance. He didn't sleep for 3 days, not out of dedication, but because sleep meant death. The pay, when it came, was never enough, a handful of coins tossed like scraps to a dog, and half the time, the client vanished or sent another blade to tie up loose ends. Tauren learned to demand payment up front, to trust no one's word. Not even the scribe who swore this job would change his life, it did, by shortening it. The world of Verland was unforgiving. Its cities a maze of muddy streets and suspicious eyes, its castles bristling with defenses, designed to keep men like Tauren out. Guards weren't just muscle, they were walls of steel and vigilance, trained to spot a stranger's twitch or a cloak to heavy with hidden steel. Castles had moats filled with filth, walls studded with arrow slits, and servants who gossiped faster than a fire spread. One wrong glance and the cook's apprentice was whispering to the captain, and Tauren was running again, dodging pitchforks and torches from villagers who thought shadow blades were cursed. Half-demon creatures who poisoned wells and hexed babies. Superstition was as deadly as steel in Verland. A shadow blade wasn't just a killer. He was a ghost story, blamed for every sudden death, from a noble's heart attack to a cow choking on a turnip. Tauren once overheard a woman hiss, "Don't look at him, he'll curse the harvest." As he passed through a market, his face hidden under a hood, his dagger wrapped in rags. He didn't argue, he just kept moving, because staying still meant a mob with stones and a priest with a bell, ready to burn the devil out of him. The tools of the trade were as crude as the life, no retractable blades or smoke bombs, just a dagger that might bend, a rope that might fray, and a prayer that neither betrayed you mid-job. Poison was a risk, not a guarantee. Brewed from plants or toad guts, it might kill, or it might just make the target vomit and hire more guards. Tauren once tried poisoning a baron's ale, only for the man's dog to lap it up first. The beast survived, but the baron tripled his tasters. Every job was a tightrope walk, one slip and you were done, not just caught, but erased. Your name a curse, your body a warning on a spike. The targets were never easy. Dukes like Baldric lived behind layers of protection, physical and political. Their paranoia was a fortress. They ate only after tasters sampled every bite, slept in locked rooms with decoy beds, and traveled with guards who'd rather die than let a blade near their lord. Getting close meant weeks of disguise, posing as a servant, a beggar, or a monk with a limp, and a fake name, Brother Eldrick, here to bless the crops. Tauren once spent days as a stable hand, mucking stalls to learn the castle's rhythm, only to find the Duke had moved to another fortress. Every job was a puzzle with missing pieces, and solving it meant risking everything for a payout that might never come. The clients were as dangerous as the targets. A shadow blade wasn't a partner, he was a tool, and tools get discarded. Tauren's second job came from a merchant named Gavric, who promised gold to kill a rival hoarding trade routes. Tauren crept through a sewer, scaled a wall, and slit the man's throat in his sleep, clean, quiet. No witnesses, but when he returned, Gavric was gone, the promised gold replaced by 2 thugs with clubs, ready to silence the loose end. Tauren escaped, barely, with a broken rib and a lesson: never trust a client's smile. Some jobs were traps, political stings to flush out enemies. Tauren once took a contract to kill a minor lord, only to find the man was a decoy, surrounded by guards waiting to spring the trap. He ran for days, hiding in ditches, shaving his beard to dodge the sketches nailed to tavern walls. Even success was a curse. A clean kill meant a city on lockdown, gates sealed, and every stranger a suspect. Torrhen's life was a series of escapes, each job leaving him more alone, more paranoid, more like the ghost Verland's villagers feared. The moral weight was heavier than the blade. Every kill left a mark, not just blood, but guilt, fear, the faces of men who'd begged or cursed or simply stared as life drained away. Torrhen didn't talk about it, couldn't, not in a tavern over ale, not to a lover who'd noticed the bloodstains on his cloak. He sat in dark corners, back to the wall, eyes on the door, drinking just enough to dull the edges, but never enough to slow his reflexes. Friends were a risk, lovers a liability. Even other criminals kept their distance. Thieves might share a laugh, but a shadow blade was a walking death sentence, feared, shunned, and always one step from betrayal. The life wasn't power, it was punishment, a slow grind of fear, and fleeting coin, a cycle that ended not in glory, but in a ditch, a noose, or a client's blade. Torrhen's story isn't one of triumph, it's a mirror to a world where survival meant becoming invisible, not just to guards, but to history itself. But what happens when a shadow blade faces a city that never sleeps, a fortress that never opens, and a betrayal that cuts deeper than any dagger? As Torrhen sharpens his blade under a flickering torch, another tale brews in a distant kingdom, where a queen wields ambition like a weapon and prophecy like a crown. Her eyes set not on survival, but on eternity. As Torrhen sharpens his blade under the flickering torchlight in Verland's rain-drenched alleys, his story of survival and betrayal lingers like a shadow, a grim reminder of a world where trust is a luxury and every step could be your last. But what happens when a shadow blade faces a city that never sleeps, a fortress that never opens, and a betrayal that cuts deeper than any dagger? In the brutal kingdom of Verland, Torrhen's life is a dance with death. Each job a gamble where the stakes are not just coin, but his very existence. Let's follow him deeper into the underworld, where the cobblestones are slick with secrets and every whisper carries the weight of a noose. Across the sea in the ancient kingdom of Thrime, another figure weaves her own deadly web. A queen whose ambition burns brighter than any torch, her eyes fixed not on survival, but on forging a legacy that will echo through eternity. For now, though, we remain in Verland, where Torrhen's next job will test not just his skill, but the fraying threads of his humanity. The city of Dravenport, Verland's bustling heart, sprawls before Torrhen like a beast that never rests, its streets a maze of mud, merchants, and menace, where every corner hides a spy and every tavern hums with treachery. It's 1287, and Verland is a land of fractured lords, each vying for power in a kingdom where loyalty is bought and betrayal is sold cheap. Torrhen, now a seasoned shadow blade, has survived a dozen jobs, each leaving him leaner, harder, and more alone, his face a map of scars and suspicion, his eyes always scanning for the next threat. His latest contract comes from a hooded figure in a dockside and a woman named Lysa, her voice low, and sharp, promising 50 silver marks to end Lord Cedric, a noble whose iron grip on Dravenport. Grain trade starves half the city while his coffers overflow. Torrhen doesn't ask why. He never does. The reasons are always the same: greed, revenge, or power. And none of them matter when you're starving. The job seemed straightforward. Cedric's manor lies on the city's edge, guarded but not impregnable. A single night's work for a man who knows how to move unseen. But straightforward is a lie in Verland, and Torrhen knows it. Every job is a trap waiting to spring. Every client a potential executioner. He takes the coin, half up front as always, and slips into the night, his cloak heavy with the weight of a dagger and the ghosts of men he's killed. Dravenport is no place for amateurs. Its streets are a labyrinth of narrow alleys, crumbling walls, and sudden dead ends, where a wrong turn lands you in a beggar's knife or a guard's grip. Torrhen moves like a wraith, his boots silent on the wet stone, avoiding the glow of lanterns and the chatter of late-night drunks. He's learned the city's pulse, the rhythm of patrols, the creak of gates, the hours when servants slip out to meet lovers or sell secrets. Cedric's manor looms ahead, a squat fortress of grey stone, its walls studded with iron spikes and its moat a stinking trench of refuse. Tauren's plan is simple: scale the eastern wall, slip through a servant's entrance, and find Cedric in his chambers before dawn. But simplicity is a myth for a shadow blade, and the manor is alive with danger guards. Pace the ramparts, their torches casting long shadows. Dogs prowl the courtyard, their noses twitching for intruders, and servants gossiping corners, their eyes sharp for unfamiliar faces. Tauren's disguise is a tattered monk's robe, stolen from a drunk friar, the hood pulled low to hide his face, a wooden staff to mask his limp, and a muttered prayer to sell the act. He's Brother Auric now, a wandering holy man seeking shelter, a lie that might buy him a moment's grace, but not much more. The eastern wall is his entry, a crumbling section where ivy clings like a traitor's promise. But climbing it means dodging a guard who pauses every 10 minutes to spit into the moat. Tauren counts the seconds, his fingers gripping the rough stone, his body pressed flat as the guard passes, oblivious to the shadow clinging to his wall. The climb is slow, every creak of ivy a heartbeat, every rustle a warning. But Tauren reaches the top, his hands raw, his breath steady despite the fear gnawing his gut. The servant's entrance is unguarded, a small mercy, but the door is locked, a heavy iron bolt that laughs at his knife. He pulls a bent nail from his cloak, a thief's tool from a job gone wrong, and works the lock, his fingers trembling not from cold but from the certainty that time is his enemy. The lock gives way with a soft click, and Tauren slips inside, the air thick with the smell of wax and wood smoke. The manor's interior is a maze of corridors lit by flickering sconces, the walls hung with tapestries depicting Cedric's victories, battles Tauren fought in years ago, back when he believed in honor. Now, honor is a word for men who don't bleed for silver. He moves silently, his steps light on the stone floor, avoiding the creaky boards he memorized from a bridesmaid's description. The servants are asleep, or so he hopes, but every shadow could be a spy, every door a trap. Cedric's chambers are on the 3rd floor, behind a guarded hall, and Tauren knows getting there means passing the kitchen, where a cook might still be stirring stew, and a great hall, where drunken guards might linger over dice. He chooses the servants' stairs, narrow and dark, the kind of place where a shadow blade lives or dies. The stairs groan under his weight, each step a test of nerve, but he reaches the 3rd floor, his heart pounding, his dagger drawn. The hall is quiet, the kind of silence that screams ambush. The guards stand at Cedric's door, their armor glinting in the torchlight, their voices low as they trade complaints about the cold. Tauren curses under his breath. He'd hoped for one guard, not to, and fighting them risks noise, blood, and a chase he can't outrun. He retreats to a shadowed alcove, his mind racing for a plan. Poison is out, he has none, and his dagger won't take to men quietly. He spots a loose flagstone, heavy enough to stun, and waits, his breath shallow, until one guard wanders to relieve himself. Tauren moves, swift and silent, the stone crashing against the guard's skull, a dull thud that drops him without a cry. The second guard turns, hand on his sword, but Tauren's dagger is faster, slicing through the man's throat before he can shout. Blood sprays, warm and sticky, and Tauren drags the bodies into the alcove, his hands shaking as he wipes the blade on their cloaks. The door to Cedric's chamber is unlocked, a rare stroke of luck, and Tauren slips inside. The room dark except for a single candle, its flame dancing like a traitor's promise. Cedric sleeps heavily, his snores a rhythm Tauren matches as he creeps closer, his dagger raised, his mind blank except for the job. The kill is clean, a single thrust to the heart, no scream, no struggle, just a man who was alive and now isn't. Tauren doesn't linger, he never does. The blood on his blade is a clock ticking, and Travanport will wake soon. He retraces his steps down the servants' stairs, past the kitchen where a cook now stirs, oblivious to the death above. The eastern wall is his exit, but the moat below is alive with torchlight, guards shouting, dogs barking. Someone found the bodies, or maybe the maid betrayed him. Tauren doesn't wait to find out. He leaps into the moat, the filth swallowing him, his body sinking into the muck as he swims for the far bank. He emerges, soaked and stinking, and runs, the city's gates already closing, the alarm bells ringing like a death knell. Travanport is a beast roused, its streets crawling with guards, its taverns buzzing with whispers of a shadow blade. Tauren sheds his monk's robe, trading it for a beggar's rags stolen from a pile. His face smeared with mud to hide his scars. He moves through the slums where no one asks questions, where eyes avoid strangers, and finds a hayloft to hide, his body aching, his mind racing with the certainty that Lysa, the client, won't pay the second half. She's likely gone, or worse, waiting with a blade of her own, because shadow blades are tools, and tools get broken when the job is done. The silver in his pocket, the half he got up front, is all he has, barely enough for a horse, not enough for a life. He counts it in the dark, each coin a reminder of the blood it cost, and wonders if the next job will be his last. The life of a shadow blade is a treadmill of fear. Every step forward pulls you deeper into the dark, every kill makes you more of a ghost. Tauren's no hero, no villain, just a man who kills to eat, who runs to live, who trusts no one because trust is a blade turned inward. In Verland, the world is a machine that grinds men like Tauren to dust, and survival means staying one step ahead of the news, the mob, or the client who smiles too easily. The manor job haunts him, not because of Cedric's death, but because of the guard's face, the one who begged before the dagger struck, a man with a wife for life, a name Tauren will never know. He pushes it down, buries it with the others, because dwelling on it is a luxury he can't afford. Dravenport's bells still echo in his ears, a reminder that the city never forgets, never forgives. He'll move on to another town, another job, another name, because stopping means dying. And Tauren's not ready for that, not yet. The hayloft is cold, the fleas bite, but it's safer than the streets. And Tauren sleeps with one eye open, his dagger under his cloak. His dreams a blur of blood and betrayal. Verland's shadows are deep, but they're not the only place where power and ambition collide. Across the sea, in the ancient kingdom of Thrime, a woman named Aeloria weaves a different kind of web, not with daggers but with prophecy, not with stealth but with fire in her veins. Her story isn't one of survival, but of conquest, a queen who doesn't just navigate the dark but commands it. Her eyes set on a throne that will outlast the stars. As Tauren fades into the night, another tale rises where ambition burns brighter than any blade, and a mother's love is sharper than any dagger. As Tauren fades into the night, his silhouette swallowed by Verland's unforgiving shadows, his life. As a shadow blade reveals a world where survival is a fleeting victory. Each killer stepped deeper into a maze of betrayal and fear. His story, steeped in the grit of Dravenport's alleys, echoes the harsh truth of a kingdom where power is won with blood and lost with a whisper. But across the sea in the ancient kingdom of Thrime, a different kind of power takes root. Not in the cold steel of a dagger, but in the fiery ambition of a woman, who wields prophecy like a blade and motherhood like a crown. Her name is Aeloria, a princess of Velis turned queen of Thrime, and her tale is not one of survival, but of conquest. A relentless drive to carve her son's name into the stars, where Tauren's world is a labyrinth of desperation. Aeloria's is a battlefield of divine will and ruthless cunning, and her story begins in a palace where every smile hides a threat and every ritual summons a storm. In the rugged hills of Velis, a tribal land on the edge of Thryme's borders, Aeloria was born in 380 BCE, not as a delicate princess destined for tapestries and courtly dances, but as a daughter of warriors, and seers raised among rituals that spoke to gods older than the marble halls of kings. Her people, the Velisians, claimed descent from a legendary hero, Tormund, whose blood was said to carry the fire of the divine, and whether or not such tales were true, Aeloria embodied their spirit from childhood. She was no stranger to the sacred groves where priestesses danced under moonlight, their chants mingling with the cries of falcons, Velis' sacred birds, believed to carry messages from the heavens. Aeloria didn't just worship, she communed, her hands stained with the ash of offerings, her dreams filled with omens of thunder and flame. Ancient texts, like those penned by Thryme's chroniclers, describe her as a figure of awe and fear, a woman who kept falcons in her chambers, their piercing cries echoing through the night, a symbol of her connection to something beyond mortal politics. To her allies, she was touched by the gods. To her enemies, she was a sorceress, dangerous and untamed. Her power began not in a throne room, but in the flicker of torchlight among the whispers of oracles. and the sharp eyes of sacred birds a princess who saw destiny not as a gift, but as a weapon to be forged. When King Theron of Thrime, a brutal and charismatic warlord with a hunger for conquest, arrived in Veles for a sacred festival in 357 BCE, he didn't just meet a princess, he encountered a force he couldn't ignore. Theron, already a collector of wives and alliances, saw in Aeloria not just beauty but a spark of divine ambition, a match for his own relentless drive. Their marriage was no love story, it was a collision of prophecy and power. Sealed under a sky said to crack with lightning on their wedding night, a tale Thryme's poets would later weave into legend. Aeloria, barely 19, stepped into Thryme's capital, Pelarion, not as a naive bride but as a queen with her eyes on the crown, her heart set on shaping a legacy greater than any king's. Thrime was a kingdom of iron and ambition. Its court a nest of vipers where loyalty shifted with the wind and kings fell to their own kin. Theron was no easy husband, his charisma matched by a wandering eye and a temper that burned through alliances. As quickly as he forged them, he married Aeloria to secure Veles' warriors, but he underestimated her. She wasn't content to be a trophy or a pawn. She built her own court within Pelarion's marble halls, gathering priestesses, loyal scribes, and minor nobles who feared her more than they feared Theron. Her rituals, steeped in Velesian mysticism, unnerved the Macedonian-born nobles, who whispered of her falcons as omens of doom, her prayers as curses. But Aeloria didn't care. She consulted oracles, read the flight of birds, and wove her mystique into a shield, her every move calculated to elevate her son, Lysarion, born a year after her marriage, a child she believed was destined to rule not just Thrime, but the world. The birth of Lysarion was no ordinary event, it was a spectacle of divine theatre. Aeloria claimed a dream where a falcon dropped a burning ember into her womb, a sign her son was marked by the gods. Theron, ever the pragmatist, scoffed but indulged her, proclaiming the boy a future king, though his own vision spoke of conquest, not prophecy. The court buzzed with tales. Some said Aeloria's rituals summoned flames that danced around the infant without burning him. Others swore the stars aligned in a warrior's pattern the night he was born. Whether truth or myth, Aeloria used these stories to cloak Lysarion in an aura of destiny, making him untouchable in the eyes of Thryme's superstitious nobles. But the palace was no sanctuary. Theron's other wives, especially the Macedonian-born Lady Serena, posed a threat, her lineage purer in the eyes of Thryme's elite, her potential sons a challenge to Lysarion's claim. Aeloria saw the danger early. A rival heir was a spark that could burn her son's future to ash, and she wasn't one to wait for the fire to spread. Her marriage to Theron was a battlefield, not of swords but of whispers, alliances, and carefully placed fears. She didn't embroider or simper, she strategized. Her chambers a war room where priestesses read omens, and spies brought news of Theron's latest betrayals. By the time Lysarion was a teenager, Pelarion's palace had become a crucible of intrigue. Every feast a stage for veiled insults, every council meeting a chessboard where Aeloria moved her pieces with precision. Theron, now older and drunk on his own conquests, began to drift from her, listening to Macedonian advisors who saw Aeloria as a foreign witch, her Velesian roots a stain on their pure Thrime bloodline. The final blow came when Theron married Serena, a young noblewoman whose uncle, General Valda, held sway over Thryme's armies. To Aeloria, this wasn't just a marriage, it was a declaration of war, a move to sideline her son and elevate a new heir. The wedding feast was a disaster. Valda, emboldened by wine, mocked Jonah. His voice thick with scorn, mocked Lysarion's legitimacy, hinting he might be a bastard born of Aeloria's rituals, not Theron's blood. The insult cut deeper than steel, not just to Aeloria, but to the divine destiny she'd woven for her son. Lysarion stormed out, his pride wounded, while Aeloria retreated to Veles, her homeland. Not in defeat, but in strategy, her mind already spinning plans to turn the tables. In Veles, she was no exiled queen, but a daughter of the soil, surrounded by loyal tribesmen and priestesses who saw her as their own. She sent letters to Lysarion, not of maternal comfort, but of political fire, urging him to watch his enemies, to trust no one, to remember the gods who marked him. Back in Pelarion, she worked through whispers, sowing distrust among Theron's allies, her falcons carrying messages to nobles who owed her favors. Then came the shock that shook Thrime. Theron was struck down at his daughter's wedding, a dagger to the heart as he prepared to march on a rival kingdom. His dreams of empire bleeding out on the marble floor. Whispers swirled. Was it a spurned bodyguard, a court rival, Lysarion himself, or in hushed tones, Aeloria? No proof pinned her, but the court's eyes turned to the queen who spoke with gods, her absence a shadow heavier than presence. Within days, Serena and her newborn son were dead, some say by Aeloria's command. Their deaths brutal and public, a message carved in blood. No one threatens Lysarion's throne. The chronicles of Thrime, like those of ancient historians, speak of Aeloria's hand, though none dared accuse her openly. Her falcons and her rituals made her untouchable, a queen who didn't just wield power but shaped it like clay. With Theron gone, Aeloria returned to Pelarion, not as a grieving widow but as a force of divine wrath. Her son, barely 18, crowned king with no rival to challenge him. She didn't just clear his path, she paved it with the bones of her enemies. Her every move a testament to a mother's love sharper than any blade. Lysarion, trained by scholars and hardened by her teachings, took the throne. His reign built on the blood Aeloria spilled, though he didn't always approve. He never stopped her, for he knew, as she did, that power demands sacrifice, and Thryme's crown was forged in fire. Aeloria's work didn't end with the coronation. She stepped back, not into shadow, but into legend, her influence lingering in the letters she sent Lysarion, now marching to conquer distant lands. Her words were not soft, they were steel, warning of traitors, questioning his allies, reminding him his victories came from her gods and her will. In Pelarion, she clashed with General Antipon, Theron's old ally, who held the regency but bent under her pressure, her whispers stirring rebellion among the nobles. She wasn't just a queen mother, she was a storm, her falcons circling above a kingdom that feared her name. As Lysarion's empire stretched across mountains and seas, Aeloria remained in Thrime, not idle but scheming, her rituals ensuring her son's divine favor, her spies ensuring his enemies' silence. When news of Lysarion's death reached her in 323 BCE, it wasn't a loss but a collapse of the world she'd built, her son, her divine storm, gone, leaving a fractured empire and a vulnerable heir. Young Arion, born to Lysarion's foreign bride, Roxana. Aeloria allied with Roxana, not out of love but necessity. Arion was her grandson, the last thread of her legacy, a child who could be king or kindling if she faltered. The generals who bowed to Lysarion now eyed the throne, their armies hungry for power. But Aeloria didn't flinch. She'd faced worse odds and won. She plotted, waited, and when the time came, returned to Thrime with an army. Not as a mother, but as a queen reclaiming her son's dream. Towns opened their gates, soldiers defected, and Aeloria hunted her enemies, executing Theron's puppet heir and his wife with a brutality that echoed her falcon's cries. For a moment, she held Thrime in her grip, the kingdom bending to her will, her grandson's crown secured. But power is fleeting, and General Castian, Antipon's son, struck back, his forces overwhelming hers, her allies fading like smoke. Besieged in a coastal fortress, Aeloria stood unyielding, her presence a myth that shook her enemies, even as hunger gnawed her garrison. Castian offered safety, but she knew promises were ash, and when her forces broke, she faced her end not as a prisoner but as a queen, her eyes piercing the executioners who hesitated, fearing the gods she served. Foreign blades, untouched by her legend, finally struck her down, but Aeloria's shadow lingered, her name a whisper of power and prophecy, a queen who didn't just shape history but haunted it. Her story, like Tauron's, is one of hidden forces, but where his was a struggle to survive, hers was a battle to command, to bend fate to her will. As Aeloria's falcons fade into Thryme's skies, another tale emerges, not of blades or crowns, but of a palace that breeds mystery, a place where walls whisper and corridors twist into eternity. On the sunlit island of Knovara, a labyrinth of stone and secrets waits to draw us into a world where myth and history entwine, pulling us deeper into the orbit of the past. As Aeloria's falcons vanish into the twilight skies of Thrime, Their piercing cries echo a legacy of ambition and blood. A queen who wove prophecy and power into a crown for her son, only to fall in a world that feared her as much as it revered her. Her story, like Tauren's in Verland, is one of hidden forces shaping history. But where his was a desperate dance with survival, hers was a calculated conquest, bending fate with a will as fierce as any storm. Yet, across the shimmering waves of the Aegean, another tale unfolds, not forged in steel or ambition, but carved in stone and mystery, where a palace whispers secrets older than kingdoms. On the sun-drenched island of Knovara, nestled off the coast of a fictionalized Aegean realm, lies a labyrinthine marvel, a place where corridors twist like dreams and walls pulse with the heartbeat of a lost civilization. This is the Palace of Knovara, home of the Savian people, a society that thrived around 1900 BCE before the rise of Thryme's kings or Verland's Shadowblades, a civilization that didn't conquer with armies, but with art, trade, and an architectural genius that still baffles us today. Let's step into its winding halls where every corner holds a story, and the line between myth and history blurs into something eternal. The Savians, unlike the war-hungry kingdoms of later ages, built their power on the sea, their ships gliding across the Aegean like silent arrows, trading pottery, saffron and bronze from Egypt to distant shores. Their palace at Knovara wasn't a fortress on a hill, but a sprawling city under one roof. Covering nearly 150,000 square feet, its 1,000 rooms a tapestry of workshops, shrines, and apartments connected by corridors that seemed to defy logic itself. Imagine walking through Knovara today, its sunlit courtyards framed by vibrant frescoes of dolphins leaping through waves, dancers twirling in flounced skirts, and sacred stags, their antlers curling like the island's own hills. The air is cool, thanks to ingenious light wells and air shafts, a marvel of engineering that kept rooms livable long before the world knew of aqueducts or plumbing. Clay pipes carried rainwater, toilets flushed with a sophistication that would make later empires blush, and multi-story buildings rose on terraced slopes, a testament to a people who understood balance, beauty, and the divine. This wasn't just a palace, it was a living organism, a place where every stone seemed to hum with purpose, where the sacred and the everyday wove together in a dance as fluid as the sea. The Savians left no deciphered records, their script known as glyph, a puzzle. That mocks modern scholars, but their art speaks louder than words. Frescoes of stags, and lilies of women holding serpents, not in fear, but in reverence, symbols of renewal and power. The stag, Knovara's sacred animal, adorned every corner, its antlers painted on walls. Carved into altars, a motif that whispered of fertility, strength, and the gods who walked among them. Unlike the grim fortresses of Verland or the intrigue-filled halls of Thryme, Knovara felt like a temple, its layout a ritual in stone, designed not just to house people, but to connect them to something greater. Archaeologists, like the fictional Sir Eldrick Varnholt who unearthed Knovara in the 19th century, believed its maze-like design inspired tales of a labyrinth, not a prison for monsters, but a sacred space where the divine was near, where every twist led closer to the gods. To walk Knovara's halls was to lose yourself, not in confusion, but in awe. Its corridors looping back, staircases spiraling to nowhere, rooms opening into rooms like secrets unfolding. The central courtyard, vast and sunlit, likely hosted rituals where young men and women leaped over charging stags. Not as sport, but as theater, a dance of danger and grace that honored the divine chaos of nature. The so-called throne room, with its alabaster chair flanked by griffin frescoes, wasn't just a seat of power, it was a shrine, perhaps for a priest-king or a goddess whose name we'll never know. Every detail, from the stylized antlers on rooftops to the snake goddesses found in hidden storerooms, suggested a people who saw the world as sacred, their palace a bridge between earth and eternity. Knovara's builders were not just architects, they were poets in stone, crafting a space that felt alive, its walls speaking in colors, its corridors guiding you deeper into mystery. But what was Knovara's purpose? Was it a royal residence, a city, a temple, or something more? A labyrinth of the soul where myths were born? Sir Eldrick, digging through the ruins in 1875, saw it as the heart of the Savian civilization, naming them after a mythical king, Sarvan, whose legend echoed in later Greek tales. His excavations uncovered a world far older than Thrymm's marble palaces, a Bronze Age marvel that challenged everything Europe knew about its past. Yet, Eldric's work was as much imagination as science, his concrete restorations shaping Knovara into a vision of his own, a blend of ancient truth and Victorian romance. Critics called it vandalism, but his supporters saw genius. A man who didn't just uncover stones but resurrected a story. The frescoes he found of dolphins and dancers weren't just art, they were a language. Speaking of a people who celebrated life, not war, who worshipped nature, not conquest. The double axe or labrie etched into walls and shrines was no weapon, but a symbol perhaps of female divinity or celestial cycles. Some even whisper that the word labyrinth comes from labrie, making Knovara not a maze but a house. Of sacred axes, a place where the divine was carved into every stone. The Savians' world was one of balance, their trade networks stretching to distant lands, their ships carrying wealth that made them rich without swords. Unlike Aeloria's Thrym, where power was blood and betrayal, or Tauren's Verland, where survival was a blade's edge, Knovara's strength was its elegance, its confidence so great it needed no walls, only the sea as its shield. But this golden age didn't last. Something broke Knovara, and the Savians vanished, their palace left to crumble under olive groves and time. Theories swirl. Some point to a cataclysm around 1600 BCE, a volcanic eruption on a nearby island. Perhaps Thoros that unleashed tsunamis and ash clouds, choking crops and shattering ports. Others suggest invasion, mainlanders from a rising power, the Vrinians, who absorbed Knovara's wealth and replaced its script with their own. Yet, the ruins show no charred bones, no signs of slaughter. Knovara didn't fall with a scream, but with a sigh, its runes emptying, its rituals fading, its frescoes left to the mercy of wind and dust. By the time Greek poets sang of labyrinths and monsters, Knovara was already myth, its truth buried under layers of story. What was it about Knovara that inspired such tales? Perhaps it was the palace itself, its disorienting design a puzzle that felt alive, its stag motifs hinting at rituals too strange for later Greeks to understand. The myth of a labyrinth, of a beast trapped within, might have been born from Knovara's corridors. Not a literal maze, but a metaphor for a civilization too complex, too alien, to be remembered clearly. Some scholars argue the labyrinth was political, a symbol of Knovara's dominance over weaker states. Its stag a stand-in for raw power hidden behind elegance. Others see it as psychological, the palace a map of the mind. Its twists a journey through fear and wonder. Whatever the truth, Knovara's legacy isn't in its answers, but in its questions, each stone a riddle, each fresco a whisper of a world that shimmered and vanished. To walk Knovara today is to feel its pulse not in ghosts, but in the hum of history. A place where time folds in on itself, where every corner invites you to wonder. What the Savians believed, what they feared, what they loved. Their goddesses, bare-breasted and snake-wreathed, weren't submissive, they were guardians. Their raised arms a challenge to the chaos of the world. The stag-leaping rituals weren't games, they were prayers, a dance with danger that bound the Savians to their gods. Knovara wasn't just a place, it was a story, a myth carved in stone, a labyrinth not to trap but to guide, leading those who entered deeper into the divine. Sir Eldric's spade brought it back to light, but he didn't solve it. No one can, because Knovara doesn't yield its secrets, it offers them like a gift, daring you to chase the thread of its meaning. The Savians' fall, whether by volcano or conquest, left Knovara silent, but its echo endures in the tales of labyrinths in the awe of archaeologists, in the imagination of poets who saw in its ruins a story too vast for history alone. As we trace the contours of Knovara's walls, we feel the weight of a civilization that didn't just build but dreamed, a people who turned stone into song. But Knovara's tale isn't the end, it's a bridge to another mystery, one where stone becomes a weapon, where the clash of empires isn't whispered in shadows or woven in prophecy, but hammered out in the roar of siege machines, where the past teaches us not just how to build, but how to break. The sun sets over Knovara's ancient stones, their vibrant frescoes fading into twilight, whispering of a civilization that danced with gods and vanished into myth. The Savian's palace, with its labyrinthine halls and sacred stags, stands as a testament to a world where beauty and mystery will power a stark contrast to the blood-soaked blades of Verland's shadow blades or the fiery ambition of Thryme's Queen Aeloria. Yet, Knovara's story doesn't end with its silent ruins. It beckons us to explore what broke this shining world, what forces, natural or human, turned a thriving civilization into a ghost of itself. As we trace the final chapters of Knovara's tale, we uncover not just its fall but the echoes it left behind, ripples that stirred legends and shaped the imaginations of those who came after. In the island's crumbling courtyards, where dolphins still leap in painted waves, we find clues to a collapse that wasn't just a loss, but a transformation, a shift that pulls us toward the next orbit of history's hidden forces. The Savians, around 1900 BCE, ruled the Aegean from their sunlit palace, their ships weaving a web of trade that stretched from Egypt's Nile to the rocky coasts of distant lands, their wealth not in armies but in saffron, bronze, and the intricate pottery found shattered in their ruins. Knovara was their heart, a sprawling complex of over 1,000 rooms where artisans carved antlered stags into altars, where priestesses lifted serpents in rituals that felt like conversations with the divine. But by 1600 BC, this vibrant world began to unravel, not with the clash of swords or the cries of battle, but with a silence that crept in like fog, leaving the palace empty, its workshops cold, its frescoes to peel under the weight of centuries. What caused this fall? The clues are scattered like shards of Savian pottery, each piece a fragment of a story that refuses to be whole. One theory points to the island of Thoros, 30 miles north, where a volcano erupted with a force that shook the Aegean, its ash cloud blotting out the sun, its tsunamis clawing at Knovara's shores. The eruption, dated roughly to 1600 BCE by scholars studying ash layers in distant cores, would have been apocalyptic, a roar that deafened the heavens, sending waves crashing over docks, drowning fields and choking the air with sulfur. Imagine the Savians, their rituals halted mid-chant, staring at a sky turned black, their sacred stags fleeing as the earth trembled. The palace, for all its genius, wasn't built for such wrath. Its clay pipes cracked, its courtyards flooded, its granaries ruined by salt and ash. Hunger would have followed, not just for the body but for the spirit, as the gods they worshipped seemed to turn away. Yet, the ruins tell a stranger tale. There are no charred bones, no signs of panicked flight, no weapons scattered in defense. Knovara's fall wasn't sudden. It was a slow bleed, a civilization that didn't burn but faded, its people perhaps sailing away, seeking new shores as their island choked on ash. Another theory whispers of invasion, not a dramatic siege like those in Verland's grim castles, but a subtler conquest by the Vrinians, a mainland people whose crude pottery and linear script began appearing in Knovara's later layers. These Vrinians, ancestors of later Greek tribes, were warriors where the Savians were artists. Their ships not traders but raiders, their axes not symbols but tools of war. By 1450 BCE, Knovara's palace showed signs of change, Vrinian-style weapons in its storerooms, simpler frescoes replacing the Savians' vibrant art, as if the island's soul was being rewritten. Did the Vrinians storm the palace, or did they creep in through trade and marriage, absorbing Knovara's wealth until its people were shadows in their own home? The absence of battle scars suggests the latter, a cultural conquest where the Savians, weakened by Thoros' eruption, couldn't resist the tide of a hungrier, rougher people. The palace didn't fall to fire but to time, its rooms repurposed, its rituals forgotten, its stacks painted over by those who didn't understand their meaning. Sir Eldrick Varnholt, the 19th century archaeologist who unearthed Knovara, saw it differently. His journals, brimming with Victorian fervor, paint the palace as a labyrinth, a place where a mythical king, Sarvan, trapped a beast born of divine wrath. His excavations, beginning in 1875, were less science than saga, his workers clearing tons of earth to reveal courtyards and throne rooms, his sketches turning Knovara into a romantic dream of lost glory. Eldrick's concrete restorations, rebuilding walls and painting frescoes anew, were controversial. Critics called him a storyteller, not a scholar. But his vision gave Knovara life, making it not just ruins but a legend that drew poets and travelers. He saw the double axe, the labrie, etched into pillars and shrines as proof of a sacred order. Perhaps a matriarchal cult where women, not kings, held sway, their snake-wreathed goddesses guarding the palace's heart. Modern scholars scoff, citing his lack of rigor, but they can't deny the power of his discovery. Knovara wasn't just a site, it was a revelation, a Bronze Age marvel that forced Europe to rethink its past. The palace's layout, with its twisting corridors and staircases to nowhere, fueled Eldric's labyrinth theory. He argued it was designed to confuse, not invaders, but the uninitiated, guiding only those who knew its secrets to sacred spaces. The throne room, with its alabaster seat and griffin frescoes, wasn't for a king, he claimed, but for a priestess, her rituals binding the Savians to their gods. The stag-leaping frescoes, showing youths vaulting over charging beasts, weren't sport but worship, a dance with death that mirrored the island's volcanic heartbeat. Knovara's purpose remains elusive. Was it a city, a temple, a royal court, or all three? Its size suggests a population of thousands, yet its shrines hint at a spiritual core, its workshops at a bustling economy. The Savian script, glyph A, found on clay tablets, remains undeciphered, a lock without a key, its signs linear and sharp, unlike the flowing art of their walls. Some tablets list goods, grain, oil, wine, suggesting a bureaucracy as complex as their architecture. Others bear symbols that might be prayers, names, or spells. Without words, we rely on the palace itself, its frescoes a narrative of joy and reverence, its plumbing a triumph of practicality, its labyrinthine design a puzzle that invites speculation. Did the Savians build Knovara to mirror their cosmos, each corridor a star, each courtyard a season? Or was it a defense against chaos, a way to order a world shaken by quakes and storms? The volcano's shadow looms large. Thoros' eruption wasn't just a disaster. It was a fracture in the Savians' world, their trade routes severed, their fields barren, their faith tested. Some fled, their ships carrying fragments of Knovara's culture to Crete and beyond. Others stayed, their lives shrinking to the palace's edges as Vrinians moved in. By 1400 BCE, Knovara was a shadow, its rooms empty, its frescoes fading, its stags left to guard a ghost town. Yet, its fall wasn't the end, it was a seed, sprouting myths that would echo through Greek tales of labyrinths and minotaurs. Stories born not of monsters but of a palace too vast, too strange to be forgotten. The Greeks, centuries later, walked Knovara's ruins, their poets weaving tales of a maze where heroes fought beasts, perhaps misreading the stag-leaping rituals or the labrie symbols as something darker. Knovara's legacy wasn't in its stones but in its mystery, a civilization that didn't conquer but captivated, its art inspiring all long after its people vanished. Eldric's excavations made it a beacon, drawing scholars who debated its purpose, poets who saw it as a lost Eden and adventurers who wandered its halls, seeking the thread of its truth. The palace's silence was its loudest voice, each empty room a question, each fresco a story half told. Unlike Aeloria's calculated ruthlessness or Tauron's desperate survival, Knovara's power was in its enigma, a civilization that didn't need swords to endure. Its fall, whether by volcano or Vrinian hands, wasn't a defeat but a transformation. Its ideas carried forward by those who walked its ruins, its beauty preserved in the myths it inspired. As we stand in Knovara's central courtyard, the sea breeze stirring dust where dancers once twirled, we feel the weight of a world that didn't just live but dreamed its collapse not an end, but a doorway to new stories. The Savians' palace with its stags and serpents, its corridors and courtyards, reminds us that history's hidden forces aren't always blades or crowns. Sometimes they're the whispers of a lost people, their art a bridge across millennia. But as Knovara's light dims, another force rises not in stone but in steel where empires clash, and the past is forged not in beauty but in blood, pulling us back to the orbit of power betrayal and the relentless march of time. Beneath Knovara's crumbling frescoes where painted stags leap through time, and silent corridors whisper of a lost world, the Savians' story lingers. Like a half-remembered dream, their palace a riddle, carved in stone, undone by forces as elusive as the gods they worshipped. The fall of Knovara, whether by Thoros' fiery wrath or the slow creep of Vrinian conquest, marks not just an end but a pivot a moment where history's hidden currents shift from creation to destruction, from art to ambition. The Savians built with beauty, their legacy enduring in myths that outlasted their walls. But their collapse opens the door to a harsher world where power is measured not in frescoes, but in blood, where empires rise on the ruins of dreams. Across the Aegean, beyond Verland's shadowed alleys and Thryme's treacherous courts, a new force stirs, not in the elegance of Knovara's labyrinth, but in the clash of steel and the hunger for dominion. This is the story of Knovara's final echo, not its stones, but its shadow, the ripples of its fall. That fed the rise of empires, where men like General Castian Thryme's ruthless victor over Aeloria forged their own legends. In a world where survival demanded conquest, let's step into the chaos that followed Knovara's silence, where the Savians' legacy became a spark for new battles, and the past taught not just how to build, but how to break. The year is 1450 BCE, and the Aegean is no longer the Savians' playground. Their trade routes have frayed, their ships lie broken on rocky shores, and their palace at Knovara stands half empty, its vibrant halls now home to Vrinian settlers, a rougher people whose axes are tools of war, not symbols of divinity. The Vrinians, hailing from the mainland's rugged hills, are not poets or artists but warriors, their culture one of bronze and blood, their gods demanding sacrifice over reverence. Unlike the Savians, who wove their power through trade and ritual, the Vrinians build theirs through dominance, their settlements dotting the Aegean like scars, their pottery crude but sturdy, their script, Linear B, overwriting Knovara's undeciphered glyph. The palace, once a living city, becomes a trophy, its courtyards repurposed as barracks, its shrines stripped of their sacred stags, replaced by altars to warlike deities. The Vrinians don't destroy Knovara, they claim it, their presence a slow erasure, like ink bleeding over a delicate scroll. The transition isn't violent, not at first. Archaeological layers show a gradual shift. Savian pottery gives way to Vrinian jars, frescoes fade under plaster, and the palace's plumbing, a marvel of engineering, clogs with neglect. By 1400 BCE, Knovara is a shadow of itself, its population dwindled, its trade network severed, its rituals forgotten. The Vrinians, with their fortified hilltops and war chariots, bring a new order, one that values strength over splendor, conquest over creation. This shift isn't just Knovara's story, it's the Aegeans. A turning point where the Bronze Age's golden dreams give way to an age of iron ambition, setting the stage for empires like Thryme, where figures like Aeloria would later wield prophecy and power. The Vrinians' rise wasn't just a takeover, it was a transformation, their influence spreading across islands and mainland, their language and weapons reshaping the Aegean's future. Knovara's fall, whether sparked by Thoris's eruption or hastened by Vrinian boots, left a void that warriors, not artists, filled. Their legacy not in beauty, but in the foundations of Greece's later city-states. The palace's labyrinthine design, once a sacred puzzle, becomes a practical challenge for Vrinian warlords, who use its maze-like halls to store grain and weapons, its courtyards to train soldiers. The stag-leaping rituals, once a dance with the divine, are replaced by mock battles. The frescoes of dolphins and dancers painted over with crude shields and spears. Yet, Knovara's ghost lingers, its architecture too vast to be fully erased, its myths too potent to be silenced. The Vrinians, pragmatic as they are, can't escape the palace's aura. Their scribes record tales of a labyrinth not as a temple, but as a prison for something monstrous, a story that will echo centuries. Later in Greek legends of Minos and his beast, this myth born from Knovara's twisting corridors isn't just folklore, it's a bridge between the Savians' world and the one that followed. A reminder that even in collapse, a civilization's ideas endure, reshaping the minds of those who walk its ruins. The Vrinians' dominance, however, isn't unchallenged. Their rise stirs rivals across the Aegean, from the Hittites in the east to emerging tribes in the north, each hungry for the wealth Knovara once commanded. The palace, though diminished, remains a prize, its strategic position on the island a gateway to trade routes that still pulse with life. Vrinian warlords, like Lord Kretos, a fictional figure inspired by early Mycenaean leaders, fortify Knovara's walls, not to preserve its art, but to guard its harbors, their ships now carrying bronze swords instead of saffron. Kretos, a grizzled commander with eyes like flint, rules Knovara not as a king, but as a conqueror. His court a mix of Vrinian warriors and Savian holdouts, uneasy allies bound by necessity. His rule is harsh, his taxes heavy, his justice swift, a far cry from the Savians' communal rituals. Under Kratos, Knovara becomes a fortress, its light wells sealed, its frescoes ignored, its sacred spaces turned into storerooms for grain and oil. The Vrinians' world is one of constant tension. Their settlements face raids from rival tribes, their ships battle pirates, and their leaders grapple with the palace's legacy, a place too grand for their rough hands, yet too valuable to abandon. Kratos' reign, around 1420 BC, is marked by ambition. He dreams of uniting the Aegean under Vrinian rule, a vision that echoes Aeloria's later conquests in Thrime, though his tools are cruder, his methods bloodier. He sends envoys to distant courts, offering tribute for peace, but his true strength lies in his warriors, trained in Knovara's courtyards, their chariots rumbling across the island's hills. The palace, once a beacon of trade, becomes a hub of war, its workshops forging spears, its harbors launching raids. Yet, Kratos faces resistance not just from outsiders but from within Savian descendants. Hiding in the island's villages, cling to old rituals whispering of stags and goddesses, their defiance small but stubborn. These holdouts, led by a priestess named Lyrene, a fictional figure rooted in Minoan religious traditions, gather in secret groves, their chants a faint echo of Knovara's past. Lyrene, with her braided hair adorned with shells, claims visions of the old gods, urging her people to resist the Vrinians, not with swords but with memory, keeping the palace's spirit alive through stories and songs. Her defiance is no match for Kratos' bronze, but it plants seeds of rebellion, tales that will inspire later Greeks to dream of heroes and labyrinths. The clash between Kratos and Lyrene isn't just a power struggle, it's a collision of worlds. The Savians' reverence for the divine against the Vrinians' hunger for control. Knovara's ruins bear witness, their stones marked by both cultures. Savian frescoes chipped by Vrinian axes, Vrinian inscriptions carved over sacred symbols. The palace's decline is a slow tragedy, its plumbing fails, its walls crack, its courtyards fill with weeds, but its myth grows, fueled by Lyrene's followers and the Vrinians' own fears. By 1350 BCE, Knovara is all but abandoned. Kratos moves his court to a mainland fortress, leaving the palace to shepherds and ghosts. The Vrinians' empire, though strong, lacks the Savian spark. Their rule is one of force, not inspiration, their legacy in swords, not stories. Yet, Knovara's shadow endures, its labyrinthine halls inspiring tales that travel across the Aegean, reaching poets who weave them into epics, historians who puzzle over their truth. The palace's fall, like Aeloria's death or Torrhen's endless flight, is a story of hidden forces. Not just volcanoes or invasions, but the quiet power of memory, the way a place can shape the future, long after its builders are gone. The Vrinians, for all their conquests, can't escape Knovara's pull. Their scribes record its wonders. Their warriors whisper of its ghosts, and centuries later Greek bards will sing of a labyrinth, not knowing they're echoing a palace that once held a civilization's dreams. The Aegean, reshaped by Knovara's fall, becomes a crucible for new powers, its islands and mainland spawning city-states that will one day birth Athens and Sparta, their roots in the Vrinians' bronze and the Savians' myths. Knovara's legacy isn't in its stones but in its stories. The way it taught the world that power isn't just won, it's dreamed. Its corridors a map of human ambition, fear and wonder. As we leave Knovara's ruins, the sea lapping at its shores, we feel the weight of its silence. A civilization that didn't just fall but transformed. Its echoes carried forward by those who walked its halls. But Knovara's tale, like Torrhen's and Aeloria's, is part of a larger orbit. A journey through history's hidden currents where blades, crowns, and labyrinths weave a tapestry of human struggle. As we step away from the Aegean shores, let's gather these threads from Verlin's shadows, to Thryme's thrones, to Knovara's ruins, and see how they converge, revealing the forces that don't just shape the past but pull us even now into their endless revolution. As the Aegean winds sweep through Knovara's silent ruins, carrying whispers of stags and serpents, of a civilization that dreamed in stone and faded into myth, we stand at the crossroads of our journey through history's hidden currents, from the rain-soaked, alleys of Verland where Torrhen's blade carved a desperate path through betrayal and survival to the torchlit halls of Thrime, where Aeloria's fiery ambition forged a dynasty in blood, and prophecy to the sunlit labyrinth of Knovara where the Savians wove beauty into eternity, only to vanish under ash. And time, these stories are not just echoes of the past, but threads in a tapestry that binds us too. The forces that shape our world. Each tale, distinct yet intertwined, reveals the unseen powers that drive history. The shadow blades who kill to live, the queens who bend fate to their will, and the palaces that hold secrets deeper than any grave. In Verland Torrhen's life as a shadow, Blade showed us a world where trust is a luxury and every step is a gamble. His rusty dagger a symbol of a kingdom where power is won with blood and lost with a whisper. His story, grounded in the grim realities of 13th century Europe, mirrors the struggles of those who live on the edge, their names forgotten but their choices rippling through time. In Thrime, Aeloria's relentless drive to secure her son Lysarian's throne painted a portrait of ambition as sharp as any blade, her rituals and ruthlessness, drawn from the chronicles of ancient Macedonia, reminding us that power is not just taken but crafted with a cost that stains the soul. And in Knovara, the Savians' palace, inspired by the Minoan marvels of Crete, stood as a testament to a people who built not for war, but for wonder, their fall whether by volcano or conquest, a lesson that even the greatest dreams can crumble, yet their echoes shape myths that outlast empires. These stories spanning centuries and seas are united by a single truth: history is not just kings and battles, it's the hidden forces, the desperate, the driven, the dreamers who carve the path forward, often at a price we can scarcely imagine. Torrhen's survival, Aeloria's conquest, and Knovara's mystery are not just tales of the past. They're mirrors reflecting the choices we face, the ambitions we chase, and the legacies we leave. What makes them endure is their humanity, the fear in Torrhen's heart as he flees Dravenport's bells, the fire in Aeloria's eyes as she plots in Pelarian's shadows, the awe in the Savians' frescoes as they dance with their gods. These are the forces that orbit our world, pulling us into their gravity, urging us to ask, what would we do in their place? Would you wield a dagger in Verland's alleys, knowing each kill erases a piece of your soul? Would you fight like Aeloria, sacrificing everything for a dream of eternity? Would you walk Knovara's halls, seeking answers in stones that only whisper questions? These are the questions that keep us orbiting history, that make the past not a dusty book but a living pulse, a story that never ends. This is why we at History Orbit dive into these tales, not to lecture but to ignite, to pull you into the whirl of time where every shadow hides a story, every throne a struggle, every ruin a riddle. If these tales have gripped you, if Torrhen's flight, Aeloria's fire, or Knovara's secrets have sparked your curiosity, then hit that subscribe button, join our crew of explorers, and drop a comment below. Tell us which story hit you hardest, or what hidden force you want us to uncover next. Your voice fuels this journey, whether you're watching at midnight in New York, dawn in Tokyo, or dusk in London. Let us know where you're orbiting from. History isn't a straight line, it's a spiral, and every week we dive deeper, unearthing new stories that challenge, thrill, and inspire. The past is alive, its forces still shaping our world, from the shadows we fear to the dreams we chase, and we're just getting started. So stick with us, because the next revolution is coming, and you won't want to miss where history takes us next.